History remembers it as a blunder of epic proportions, a clash of empires fought over a set of church keys and the ego of a dying sultan. But the Crimean War was more than just a Victorian tragedy. It was the violent, messy birth of modern warfare. Between 1853 and 1856, the plains of the Crimean Peninsula became a laboratory for the future of human conflict, where the romanticism of the Napoleonic era finally collided with the cold reality of the Industrial Revolution. By the mid-19th century, the Ottoman Empire was the sick man of Europe. It was crumbling, and its neighbors were circling like vultures. Tsar Nicholas I of Russia saw a golden opportunity to expand south toward the Mediterranean, framing his aggression as a holy crusade to protect Orthodox Christians. But France's Napoleon III, a man desperate to live up to his uncle's legend, had his own point to prove. He demanded the keys to the holy sites in Bethlehem for the Catholics. It sounds like a minor ecclesiastical dispute, but behind the religious posturing was the great game. Britain feared that if Russia swallowed the Ottoman lands and took Constantinople, the British lifeline to India would be severed. In 1853, after Russia annihilated the Ottoman fleet at Sinop, the peace of Europe was officially dead. Britain and France, the unlikeliest of allies, sailed for the Black Sea. Their target was Sevastopol, the jewel of the Russian Navy. In September 1854, the Allied forces landed at Eupatoria. At the Battle of the Alma, the world saw the first shift in power. The British Minié rifle proved devastatingly accurate, shattering Russian columns before they could even get close. Yet victory wasn't exploited. The commanders, like the British Lord Raglan, were relics of a bygone age. Raglan had lost an arm at Waterloo 40 years earlier and famously kept referring to the enemy as the French, despite the French now being his primary allies. This disconnect between aging leadership and modern technology would define the campaign. The siege of Sevastopol began in earnest, but the Russians weren't staying behind their walls. At the Battle of Balaclava, the world witnessed two of the most famous moments in military history. First, the Thin Red Line, where a handful of Highlanders stood their ground against a Russian cavalry charge, proving that disciplined infantry could hold the line. Then, the disaster. Due to a series of vaguely written orders and personal animosity between officers, the Light Brigade, 600 elite horsemen, was ordered to charge directly into the heart of a Russian valley lined with heavy artillery. It was a suicide mission. They rode into a valley of death, hacked at the gunners, and rode back through a gauntlet of fire. It was a display of incredible bravery, but as a French general famously remarked, it is magnificent, but it is not war. As the siege dragged into 1855, the enemy changed. It wasn't the Russians killing the most men, it was the logistics. The British supply chain collapsed. Soldiers were left in tattered summer uniforms to face the brutal Crimean winter. Cholera and dysentery swept through the camps. Back at the Scutari hospital, the mortality rate was horrifying until a woman named Florence Nightingale arrived. By enforcing basic sanitation and revolutionary data management, she didn't just save lives, she invented modern nursing. She proved that more soldiers were being killed by their own environment than by Russian bullets. While the soldiers suffered, the public back home was watching. For the first time in history, the home front was connected to the battlefront. The Telegraph brought news in hours, and the first war correspondents sent back scathing reports of government incompetence. Meanwhile, Roger Fenton's camera captured the first ever war photographs. The gritty reality of the Valley of the Shadow of Death was now sitting on London coffee tables. War was no longer a distant, glorious rumor. It was a visible, documented nightmare. By late 1855, the industrial weight of the Allies finally broke the Russian defense. After nearly a year of siege, the French stormed the Malakoff redoubt. The Russians, realizing the end had come, blew up their own fortifications and retreated across a bridge of boats. Tsar Nicholas I had died months earlier, reportedly broken by the failure of his army. His successor, Alexander II, sued for peace. The 1856 Treaty of Paris checked Russian expansion and neutralized the Black Sea, but the cost was staggering, nearly 800,000 lives, the vast majority lost to disease. The Crimean War changed everything. It gave us the Victoria Cross for valor, the first weather forecasts, and even the cigarette. But its true legacy was the warning it sent. It proved that the old world of colorful coats and cavalry charges was over. The era of the industrial total war, the world of trenches, telegrams, and mass mobilization had begun. The road to the world wars started here, in the mud of the Crimea.